Hey y'all, welcome back to Lavender Book Company. I'm Kat, and we're doing a Q&A today, which I like to do these every once in a while because I just think it's fun. I get new followers kind of across all my platforms, and I've been getting some pretty good steady growth across all of them recently. And so I just think it's fun to kind of check back in and maybe answer any questions that people have. So that's what we're doing today. I'm kind of excited. So first off, we're almost to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I'm so very excited. So welcome to all my new people. Welcome to the club where we love to talk about children's books and everything revolved around that. Because for anyone who's new here, I make my own children's books. Mine is right back there. If you would like to snag your own copy of my children's book, you just follow the link down below. All the directions are down there. Sorry, I'm so out of breath. But I'm like 20 weeks pregnant and I just get so out of breath right now. So yes, so I am a self-published children's book author, but I'm very inspired about bringing the classics to the modern child. That's kind of my shtick. That's my niche, if you will. I'm breaking it down into like three main categories. Okay, we're going to go self-publishing, business, and then like personal stuff, which is mainly pregnancy. I've had a couple of people ask me about pregnancy stuff, so we're just going to answer those questions. So self-publishing was by far the topic I had the most questions submitted in on. Does your book have a moral of the story or deeper meaning? Yes. This one, the Theodore James book, man, I feel so out of breath right now. So the Theodore James book, the overarching message in that book is that you do have the confidence within yourself to conquer scary things. So that's kind of what the overall message is. Because sometimes in life we may get very fearful of something may scare us, and we either look to external sources where we don't really need to, and we just need the reminder that we have the capabilities to do scary things, and we have the capabilities within ourselves to accomplish really any goal or any task that we have. So that's the overarching message within Theodore James. What are benefits of self-publishing? Did you try other ways first? So this is something that definitely everyone has to kind of weigh out in their minds. When I first started writing the Theodore James book and I started working on it, I fully anticipated going traditional publishing. That was my goal. Okay, my goal was to be traditionally published, and I didn't really have any expectation of doing self-publishing. I made it all the way towards the end, and I even queried a couple agents. I did all my research. I was querying agents who I thought maybe aligned with what I was looking for. But the longer I looked into agents, I was having a really hard time finding agents that really aligned with what I was wanting to bring to the table. And I knew I was kind of already in an uphill battle because what I'm offering is so different than the majority of children's books today. I feel like either people, like parents today, are either going to really, really love that idea or they're just not going to get it. And so I knew I wanted someone who understood my vision. And so I queried a couple people. I got tons of rejection letters, which is very par for the course. So some things to kind of weigh out would be, now when it comes to traditional publishing, the pros is you do have a bigger publisher taking on the brunt work when it comes to like all the logistical stuff, right? So like all the printing, the marketing, the background stuff. So then that way you as the author and illustrator can kind of just focus on writing and illustrating your books. So in a way that's awesome. Now with that, when it comes to traditional publishing, you're not really guaranteed them like putting a bunch of money into the marketing process, especially if you're a first-time author. Good luck. That's kind of what it is. I mean, because they're going to put more money into their, it sounds really mean, but it's just like the way for me to describe it. They put their money like into their cash cows. Like the people who are bringing in the most money for them, that's where most of their money is going to go right now, because if you're a newer author, you're having to make a name for yourself and you're basically having to prove yourself, which obviously makes sense, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. And in turn, you also get a smaller royalty. So typically what I've seen, so it does kind of vary. If you are an author illustrator, which most agents and publishers are looking for today, they're looking for a 2-in-1. you get anywhere between like 2 to 5% off of every book sold. Now, if you're a big author, that could be a good size amount of money, but that stuff can kind of take time. So it's just things to think about. Now, you do also have the possibility of getting a what's the word? Pregnancy brain. What's the word? Like a sign on. Like you get like a sign on bonus. Like that's pretty typical. For a first time author, you probably will get maybe a couple $1,000s as like a sign on. Now, this is totally going to vary between publishers and all sorts of logistics. Okay. Now, when it comes to self publishing, so it is more of an upfront cost because you're taking on everything yourself because you're going to be your own like marketer, you're going to be your own author, your own illustrator, or if you pay for an illustrator, that's a cost. You got to find how you're going to print your book. Do you want to hold an inventory? Do you not want to hold an inventory? What's your long-term plans looking like? All those kinds of things. For me, after I queried a few agents, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't right for me. And I don't really talk about faith on here a lot, but I will just say I felt very guided to the self-publishing realm. But just know that if you take on self-publishing, there's a lot of moving parts to it. But in return, there's more of a payout reward on the other end of it if you are successful in like marketing it and things like that, which can all also take time. You just really have to look into both and see what fits for you and what you are ultimately wanting. Some people may just want to sell copies of their book, and that's freaking awesome. And Amazon KDP is a way to go on that. I've heard some pros and cons on that. I would look into that. If you're wanting to work with a big publisher, start querying some agents to try to get an agent, because if you don't get an agent, the chances of your book getting picked up by a publisher are like slim, like slim. And if you're also going for a traditional publisher, they are really looking for people who are holding a social media following, because to them that equals money. So just know that if you're going to be an author in today's world, just know that social media is part of the game. What helps you polish the storyline for your books? So I work on my manuscripts a lot before I even touch any illustrations. I work on my manuscripts a lot. I fine tune it a lot. I will take small breaks when I'm working on my manuscript to go back at it with fresh eyes. I think that's really important. Also, when you're illustrating, do that when you're illustrating too, okay? Also, what I do is I read it out loud to a lot of people. I got their feedback. I also have a good friend of mine. He works like on movie sets and stuff, and he's really good. We talk a lot about like story development and character development, like in different movies and books and things. And so I actually gave my manuscript to him, and he gave me some feedback, and I thought it was like really, really insightful. So I actually incorporated some of the points that he kind of brought up as well. So if you have people in your life, like use the talents and strengths of other people in your life to help strengthen up what you're doing. Definitely don't knock out any resources that are available to you. I'm so happy and so glad that I read it out loud as many times as I did to other people, and I was willing to kind of share it with very, very close people in my life. Okay, how many books could I see myself making? I could see myself making a lot. I have a lot of ideas for my own children's book. I have a whole notes section like dedicated in my phone for ideas that I have. And that being said, I really enjoy, I think a huge reason why I was kind of guided to make my own publishing company is I think I have a strength when it comes to developing projects, like especially in those like beginning portions of time. Like I can really see a vision, like when I see certain projects, and I get really, really inspired. So that being said, like my project number 3 kind of came to me like to my lap, and I am like so genuinely excited for it because I can see the vision. I really want to get my hands on it, and I'm like so unbelievably excited about it. And to me, it kind of just reiterated like I really enjoy this whole process, and I'm wanting to also work with other like authors and stuff to develop these like children's books. So for myself personally, I could see myself creating a lot of children's books. I have a lot of ideas and things like that, but ultimately I'm also wanting to help bring other authors and illustrators to the forefront And so eventually when I kind of grow my company up bigger, like scaling it, right? Like that's the goal. I'd like to kind of have illustrators kind of like on retainer and kind of like just grow a team of like authors to like work with and just have a development team. Like I think that'd be just so much fun and it'd be so creative. And that's just my dream. That'd be so fun. Okay, someone wants to know, how did you grow your following to help sell your book? First time kids author here. So first off, I don't want people to get a misconception. Okay. So my social medias have been kind of picking up steam the last couple months, I would say, the last few months. That does not mean that I have had just like hundreds and hundreds of sales. Okay. Like I don't want to lie to anybody. I don't want to like put these like rose colored glasses on and say that I'm just rocking and rolling in all the orders. Okay. It's definitely not what's happening. So since launching my book in March, I have sold nearly 100 copies. And that's between like social media and like farmers market. So that's like actually being in person with people, selling my book in person and things like that. Looking at self-publishing terms for that time frame, for this time frame, that's pretty good. Okay. But it's taken a lot of grunt work. Like it's hard to get to that point. Now that being said, I have grown my social medias from zero. All of them. All of them started at zero. I did not pay for anything. I don't do follow for follows. Okay, I'm not about that. That's not my goal. Because I've been a part of some like author groups on social media where they just go down the list and just follow everybody. And it might make your numbers look really good, but you're lacking like the genuine connections with people for like the long term, right? Because for me, everything's about long term. So I went into this whole game knowing I'm taking the slower route, but it's the more genuine one. And that's what matters to me because I'm kind of in a weird corner here, which I don't really feel like there's a lot of other people in the same corner, where I started a publishing company at the same time. So for me, like my perspective, I'm having to take this time to build trust with people. And as a business, that just takes time. So like I'm just creating like the foundational frameworks for my business. And that takes time. And I'm okay with that. A lot of people on TikTok, especially, have kind of just, I think a lot of people have seen a lot of businesses just kind of like sell out of things overnight, or, they just make things super cheap, which makes them sell faster. And while of course it's awesome to have sales and things like that, I'm really wanting to kind of just corner myself as a business. And so I'm thinking long term on that. So one thing I would recommend when it comes to your socials is one, if you're a self-published author, know who your market is, because I follow self-published people who they market themselves more towards self-published authors, right? And then they share tips and tricks and things like that. And that's a great direction to go in. But typically, if you kind of run yourself in that direction, you're not really going to be attracting like the other people in your potential demographic, if that makes sense. Like I'm not saying there's never a crossover, but I mean, you're kind of putting your majority focus over here. Or what you can do, which is kind of what I've done, is I have focused my whole social media for like Instagram and TikTok. That's been more focused on like my target kind of demographic, right? So that'd be like parents or people who would want to be buying a children's book for like a child in their life, like a niece or a nephew or a sibling or their own child. That's where the bulk of my attention goes. Not to say I don't have self-published people also follow me as well, but that's where my majority focus is. So just kind of keep that in mind, because that's going to help you structure your content, because it's going to be a really important way to structure your content. Now, that being said, a lot of my followers count started to kind of pick up. I was showing the behind the scenes of my first book. So a lot of people watched that process happen from beginning to end. And it's been really, really cool. It's been really special, especially for those people too, where when you see something kind of start from nothing and grow into an actual product, people also feel kind of invested in that process because they watched it. Like they watched it happen. It's so cool to see the behind the scenes. And I think we all feel that way to some extent. People really like to see the behind the scenes of something that they're not really privy to in their everyday life. So definitely share those kinds of experiences and just really be yourself. I mean, that's really all you can do, like on social media. I think people have gotten really good at sniffing out inauthentic people, and hallelujah, by the way. And so the more genuine you are and the more real you are, that's where you'll get your following. Okay, I'm working on writing and illustrating my own children's book. If you could only give one tip, what would it be? So I've actually had this question a couple times in my inbox, and my answer, not my question. Sorry if I move around. It's really hard for me to like sit still. So that's why I'm kind of swinging back and forth. If I had to give people one tip, right? I would say know the why. Like know why you're wanting to be a part of children's books. And there's no one right answer. There's no one right answer to this question. But for me, like if I was going to really boil it down to the heart of the issue, I personally, this is like what really drives me. I personally believe that family time is very important and that children's books help facilitate in that quality family time. I love to believe that I'm also helping facilitate in that time because that's time that you can never get back. And then a step beyond that is also my belief that children deserve quality and that they shouldn't be taken advantage of simply because they're children. So anyone who's been following me for any amount of time knows these things, right? So those are the core things for me. That's what's at the heart of everything that I'm doing. And that's why I'm really big on bringing quality to kids and families because I think that they deserve it. And I think that family time is just invaluable. You can't put a price tag on that. So that's my why. That's the reason why I'm doing everything I'm doing. That's why I spend all the time and energy that I do in everything that I'm doing. My last self-publishing question, like self-publishing / business question. How does one self-publish? Do you print it out and bind it at home? I am not that talented. No, I'm not that talented. So there's a few different ways. So if you actually want the nitty gritties on self-publishing, like from concept to printing, I have a whole video on that. I can put it in a little card tag up here. It's quite a long video. It's like, I think it's about 40 minutes long, but it's comprehensive. You will not need another self-publishing video on the internet. I did that on purpose. Now, when it comes to actually printing it and selling it that way, if we're going to talk about that specifically, there's a couple of different ways to do it. So there's companies where you can like print on demand. It's basically what it sounds like. They print on demand it, right? So when people order it, they print it and they send it out and everything like that. So that's an option. Another option is like Amazon KDP. There's certain things to kind of look in on that front. Or you can kind of do what I did was I found a printer to work with. There's a family-owned printing company here in my state in Utah that I have found and I am working with currently. So I went on my own and I looked up tons and tons of different like printers and things like that. Now, if you do go the printing route, okay, there's tons of printers out there. Okay, there's tons of printers. So it's really dependent on what you're wanting to do and also how much financial investment you're willing to put into the whole thing. So those are different options that you kind of just need to look into for yourself. Okay, so we're getting to the last little parts. So we're going to get into pregnancy stuff, which honestly, I was kind of surprised that I even had like anyone submitted questions. So this one I think will kind of sum up all of them. So I'm just going to read this one question because it'll just sum up all the other questions and I think it'll just answer everything else. She said, I'd love to hear your birth stories, but I totally get it if you don't want to share them. So I'm totally fine sharing my birth stories. I'm more than happy to share my own personal experiences with you guys if you guys are interested. So if people know, currently pregnant with baby 3, and she, I don't know if I've even announced that yet. She is due technically April 1st, but she's probably going to be coming sooner, and I'll explain why. So let's go back to baby number 1. I got pregnant in 2018, I had her in 2019. Everything was going fine with that pregnancy up until about the very end. Everything was very normal, right? I had every normal pregnancy symptom that you would have. You know, at the very beginning, I had nausea and fatigue and blah, 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 right? All that. Well, right around the 30-ish weeks mark, I went into a doctor's appointment. It was a regular doctor's appointment. The girl took my blood pressure. She went, oh, and then she took it again, and then she took it again, and then she left, and the doctor immediately came in and he took my blood pressure. And that's when you know something's off, is when the doctor takes your own blood pressure. Okay, when has the doctor ever taken your blood pressure? And it was high. Like it was high. Like if my memory is serving me, it was like 180 over something crazy, like 180 over like 100 or something. Like it was really, really high. It was like scary high, but I felt fine. And that's what was really scary is I was sitting there talking. I didn't have a headache. I wasn't sweating. Like I felt completely normal. So if it wasn't for me going into that appointment, I could have like stroked out. Like, and that's what I think people don't understand is like, I genuinely owe my life to like modern medicine because I could have, if I would have had my children like 150 years ago, I probably would have just stroked out at the end of my pregnancy and no one would have known why. Like they would have just chalked it up to like, oh, another woman dying with, childbearing, you know what I mean? What ended up happening with that first one was I was immediately put on bed rest. So I had to call my boss because I was currently working at the time. I was working an office job. Immediately told him I had to go on bed rest. Oh, I was 33 weeks. I was 33 weeks because I was on bed rest for a month. And during that time period, so I rested a lot. Obviously, it was bed rest. So I did a lot of puzzles. I just chilled at home. I got things ready for the baby because it was my first. So it was very quiet. You're right. I could just relax around the house and stuff. Did a lot of extra stress tests in this time. So if you've been pregnant, you know that you have stress tests. They're very normal. But for me, I had extra stress tests to make sure that my elevated blood pressure was not harming the baby because I was kind of able to keep it at a lower blood pressure, but it was still higher than what a normal blood pressure would be. And so my doctor, he told me like, our goal is to keep the baby in like as long as possible. So that was the goal, right? Every single week we were going back into the doctor's office, we went prepared with like all of our hospital stuff because we didn't know if they were going to tell us like, okay, you're going to the doctors or you're going to the hospital to deliver your child right now. So every single week we went to the doctor, we went prepared. Thankfully, we made it to 37 weeks. They tried to induce me. They had me on like max Pitocin for like 24 hours and literally nothing happened. Like literally, like nothing. I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have cramping. I wasn't having any labor pains. I felt totally fine. My daughter didn't want to do anything. Nothing happened. Like nothing, like she wasn't responding to it. My body wasn't responding to it. It just, nothing. So, but one thing scary that did happen was while I was there, my blood pressure spiked. Like the alarms were going off, things like that. The nurse came rushing in. They had to try a couple different medications before they found one that actually like lowered it back down. So thanks to those nurses. Love you guys. You guys are freaking saints. After about 24 hours of laboring, like my body was technically laboring, even though I wasn't experiencing anything like myself, like on the outside. So, and I was like really on lack of sleep and things like that. So my doctor gave me two options. He said, so we can either do a Foley balloon and see what happens, or we can do a C-section. And by that point, I just knew that she wasn't going to do anything. My daughter was not going to do anything. So I opted for the C-section. So we went in, we had a C-section. That C-section recovery was crap. That was terrible, terrible, terrible. Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was atrocious because when your body goes through all that like laboring beforehand and then you go through a major surgery like that, it's just a lot on your body. So I remember the first time the nurses came in to have me stand up for the first time after surgery, genuinely thought my insides were going to spill out onto the floor because the incision hurt so bad. And I turned to the nurse and I said, I can't believe I said this to her. I turned to the nurse and I said, have you ever had a patient punch you in the face? Because it hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. During that C-section as well, when they were pulling her out, she swallowed like 12 cc's of amniotic fluid. So they had to, it was, the whole experience was kind of just traumatic, and I don't use that term lightly because it was my first baby. I was going into a C-section that I wasn't really planning on having. I mean, no one really plans to have one, but you know what I mean? my husband's right next to me in the OR. We're both like, we've never done this before. We don't know what we're doing. And the nurse brought the baby over, flashed her to me, and then ran off because they had to suck her lungs out. And so she said, "Come on, Daddy," like talking to my husband. And I looked at him and I said, "Go, go, go. Just follow her. I'll be fine." And then I laid there on the OR table for the next 45 minutes, not knowing what the heck's going on, and thankfully my husband was with my daughter. My daughter had to spend a few days in the NICU, but she was totally fine. She recovered very well. And so that was my first experience. Then with my second son, the same thing happened. Very normal pregnancy. The one thing that I did have different between my first and my second pregnancy was with my son. I don't know if it was because of where he was positioned or he was a very large child. Okay. My kids are very big for their age. But with my son, I don't know if it was because of where he was positioned or his size or whatever, but I had terrible, like, lightning crotch with my son, where it was coming to the point where, like, I couldn't even walk through the grocery store. I remember there was one experience where I had my daughter with me and I'm standing in the back of Walmart and I was just in tears. Like, I was in tears standing at the shopping cart because I genuinely didn't know how I was going to physically get out of that store. Like, I almost was going to, like, ask for, like, medical assistance because it was so beyond painful. And you guys, I have a high pain threshold. Okay. In high school, I played a soccer game with a broken nose. Okay. I have a high pain threshold, but that was so beyond painful. But I had the same experience with my first, where right around the same time, the blood pressure started creeping up. But what we had done differently between my last and this one was every single day I had been taking a baby aspirin. And so that actually stayed off the blood pressure spike in a couple extra weeks, which is really nice. So we were able to make it to 38 weeks and we had a scheduled C-section. That was the plan. Okay. I wasn't going to go through the whole induction thing again. I wasn't going to do that. And everything went fine except the anesthesiologist. He jacked up my back. He jacked it up bad. We were in the OR and everything else had gone swimmingly, but this is my luck, you guys. I can't just have a good experience. He was doing the epidural in my back and he was digging around for so long that my husband finally had to say, "Everything all right back there?" To which his reply was, "Yeah, let me just go get a longer needle." Yeah. So needless to say, yeah, my back has not been the same in that spot. Now, over the years between seeing a chiropractor very regularly, stretching, and like strength training, it has become more manageable. The pain is very, very manageable now at this point, as long as I kind of stay on top of everything. When I go a period of time without doing those things, I notice it kind of creeps back up. So I just kind of have to stay on top of it to keep everything manageable. Other than that, everything was fine my second time around. With this baby, I had quite a different experience. So actually back at the earlier of this year, and I'll kind of pop up any pictures that I still have from that whole experience. I started experiencing pregnancy symptoms, and because it's my third child, I was even starting to show. And I was even debating on even sharing this story, but I think it's important. I think it's an important story to share because I know there's other women out there who've had a similar experience and they just don't want to talk about it. And I know exactly why. So I went in for my first appointment and there was nothing there. There was nothing there. And they checked my blood to see if I ever was pregnant, and I wasn't. So what I had actually experienced was this is a term that the doctor doesn't even like to use, but it's what people most commonly know it as. It's called an hysterical pregnancy. My doctor said he doesn't even like using it because he said it makes the women sound crazy, and you're not crazy. It's something causes your brain to think you're pregnant and release all the pregnancy, like hormones, basically. And so your body starts to react, and so that was a really weird experience because then after the fact, it was like we were experiencing a loss. It was a loss of what we never had. And so it felt weird to even feel like we were mourning a loss because we technically didn't have anything, but we were mourning the idea of something because for like 6 weeks, we were so excited. Like we were thinking, okay, like this is gonna be our last one, like this is gonna be really fun. Like it was a little bit earlier than what we were like planning on, but we were like, it's fine. Like we were in that place of life. We weren't worried about it. And so it was a really weird experience. My husband he had his own personal experience with it as well. And yeah, there was a lot of tears that were shed. And there was a long, long time where I just felt like absolutely crazy. Like I felt absolutely insane. And that was a really weird experience to go through. Hold on. Now, looking at it in retrospect, I think there was reasons why we had that experience, which are kind of personal, which I won't really go into. But what I will say is it really helped us know how much we wanted another child, how much we wanted another baby. And so then when we were ready, we gave ourselves a few months to kind of emotionally recoup from that whole experience. And so then once we were ready, that's when we had this child. So that was a really weird experience. Now so far with this pregnancy, it's been very different. It's been very different than my other two for different reasons. This time around, I didn't really have a ton of nausea. The first two times, I got nauseous before even a pregnancy test. And then I was pregnant all the way up through the first trimester. Okay. It was like clockwork with the first two. And then with this one, I had more so like food aversions, like just nothing sounded good. So I had to like force myself to eat. Like, so, cause I was getting hungry, but just nothing sounded good. So I just kind of resorted back to my normal diet of like kind of what I have been doing. And just trying to keep things like as normal as possible because my first two times around, I think I indulged a little too much. Nothing wrong with indulging while you're pregnant, but the first two times I did it too much. Okay. The fatigue around this time has been wild. The fatigue I felt in the first trimester was comparable to like third trimester fatigue with my other two. So that was like throwing me for a loop. But so far, the second trimester has been really, really good. Overall, I really can't complain. We are preparing for me to also have high blood pressure again this time around. I have about 10 weeks or so until that could potentially become a problem. So until then, my plan is to have pretty much everything else settled and ready to go before baby comes. So those are my pregnancy and birth stories. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys submitting all your questions in and everything. And definitely subscribe. I'd love to have you guys around. Hit the like button if you enjoyed getting to know me a little bit better, or if you appreciated this video. If you want to grab a copy of my book, head down to the link below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.